Welcome to the Math Together show, where thoughtful educators gather and learn together. I am Dr. Sue Looney.
I'm Heidi Subnani.
And I'm Molly Vokey. Thanks so much for being here with us tonight.
We are so excited about our guest. We have the amazing Dr. Nicki Newton with us, and we are going to get into this key question in a moment. What is the role of basic fact fluency in the math curriculum? And before we get into that, just a couple of announcements.
Yes. Please, if you are watching, make a comment, hit like, share us, tell everybody that you're watching. Dr. Nicki's here with us, so that's a good thing to share. And we also have a raffle coming up that Heidi's going to tell us about.
Yes, we are so excited about this. Dr. Nicki has generously offered 3 math courses on her Math Academy, and she is going to be giving those out. And so the way that you enter the raffle, this is the way that you do it. So if you make a comment between now and Monday evening in our Facebook page stream that goes along with this live show today, or if you're watching it recorded later, if you make a comment, we'll be taking those comments and choosing the names from that hat, so to speak. And so feel free to put as many comments as you would like in the stream right now. And hopefully you will be one of those lucky winners. This is a big prize.
Yes, and we already have 2 people entering. We have Alan and Dana are very excited about tonight.
So excellent. Yay. And if you're watching on Twitter or YouTube, you can put in the comments there as well. So we'll gather from all 3 places. And if you're not sure what to comment, just say, hi, I'm Sue, I'm in Boston, or just write the word raffle and you'll be in. But feel free to shoot questions our way. So before, just a couple of other things. We are Looney Math Consulting, and our mission in life is to help schools improve math education for all learners so that all learners have a powerful experience and a joyful experience with mathematics. And we're seeking partners right now. We're filling up our calendar of partners in districts and schools for the next upcoming school year. So if you are interested, go to our website. Also, there's lots of free resources there. So if you're a teacher and you want to see what we're all about, check that out. If you would like to get on our mailing list, it's really easy. You can do it right now. You can literally pick up your phone right now and text 22828 and then put in the word Looney, and then that will prompt you. And again, the newsletter comes out twice a month, and it's full of what is going on, where can you get professional development, downloadable things for you to readily use in your classroom right away. So that's who we are. We really are here to help, and we hope that we can become part of your toolkit of how you work with your students. So why you're really here, though, is to hear about our fabulous guest.
And let me, before we introduce our fabulous guest, we obviously have a big following because Becky, Stephanie, Mariana, and Chris are all putting stuff in the comments, and we have somebody chiming in from Houston, Texas, so that's super exciting.
Yes, everyone is really excited about Dr. Nicki's running records and using those with their students. So we are just so thrilled that she is with us here today. So I'm going to do a little biography for those of you who are, for some reason, not familiar with Dr. Nicki, who we love and have been following for years. But we're going to get into that in just a moment.
Yeah,
Dr. Nicki
Newton
is an educational consultant who works with schools and districts around the country and in Canada on K-8 math curriculum. She has taught elementary school, middle school, and graduate school. Dr. Nicki earned both her master's and her doctorate from Teachers College, Columbia University. She is greatly interested in teaching and learning practices around the world and has researched education in Denmark, Guatemala, and India. She has several books, and I think that's being really modest. She has many books. Dr. Nicki has many books, including being part of a curriculum team for a new McGraw-Hill Reveal Math series. And so we are so thrilled that Dr. Nicki is here with us today.
Yay!
Hello.
Hi. We are so excited that you're here, obviously, and all of the peeps that love you are watching. So we're excited about that too. And we always like to start with this question because it gives our listeners a little peek into who our guest is. So we always start with, what is your why? Why education? How did you get to be where you are today?
My why is the kids. I love kids and I love teaching, and I've been teaching over 30 some years now. I got to math by way of literacy. I was a literacy person for years. And then one day I went to get a job, interview for a job at an Australian company that had come to New York City when I was in grad school. And they were hiring literacy consultants. The day that I got there, they closed all literacy positions and they only had math open. And I was like, I hate math. I don't want to do math. So I was like, okay, I'm doing it for 1 year. And that was in 2003. And here we are in 2021. And I'm still doing it. And I
still hate math.
Not so much anymore. But I know nothing about literacy. Yeah. I couldn't look through a book if you asked. I know nothing about literacy. But there's so many intersections, right?
Yeah.
Between math and literacy. You can tell, though, the giveaway is this, that I was a literacy person. The first book I ever wrote was called Guided Math, because I knew guided reading. The second book I ever wrote was Math Workshop, because I knew reading workshop. The third book I wrote was Math Running Records, because I knew reading running records. So, and then I wrote some books on problem solving. Right. So you can see that I knew about structures for teaching that were important and valuable. And I just had to think about them in terms of math, right?
So and I think that crossover is so nice for people too. So that you have a structure that you're familiar with and that you have found success with, it makes it less intimidating when you can find a similar structure in a content area that may not be as friendly to the teacher in that way. And so that's a really interesting point that you're making there.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think so much too that you talk about, and when we look at your work around running records and things, it's about sort of the learning continuum, the learning trajectory, and so really immersing ourselves in how children learn, regardless of subject area. But then, of course, there's this mathematics continuum. So it's sort of the equivalent of that, right?
Yes, absolutely. And it's really about, I think in literacy, we're really good at kid watching, right? Good at knowing who kids are, what they like, how that impacts who they are as a reader. And we don't even really think about that much in math. I'm in the middle of writing a revised version of Guided Math right now. And I included actually a chapter on kid watching in this version, because I just think it's so important. We need to know who our kids are. What do they like? What do they not like? How do they get along with each other? What do they do when they're having trouble? Do they shut down? Do they stick? I think all of those things contribute to what makes a really good mathematician, and teachers need to know how to look for that, identify that, work with that. And that's why I think like even the running records are so important, because what you're doing is you're talking to kids. You're not just giving a paper and pencil assessment. You're actually asking kids, well, what do you think about that? Well, how do you know that? Well, what do you do when you get stuck? What was easy? What was hard? I mean, you're asking all of those questions that inform who the child is.
Yeah, it's like it's a little bit of detective work, right? Like being really curious.
Yes.
And then detecting the mode and the stage that they're in.
Right. And it's really about asset-based, right? Because
for sure,
so important.
What can they do? We're not in the running record. We're not looking for, what can't they do? We're looking at what can they do? Where is our starting point to take them to the next level? So we know from the running record that they can do all these things. And now what's next? Right? So I really think we have to get out of this deficit perspective. And I think running records are one way to do that. I think guided maths are another way to do that. Because again, when you're pulling guided math groups for fluency or whatever, you're looking at what can they do? What are they able to do? How am I going to build on? And what do they need help with? And what do they want help with? I don't think we ask that question. We say, what do they need help with? But we don't say, what do they want help with? I really believe when you're doing like guided math groups, you should ask kids, what kind of group do you think we should form? Yeah. What do you think we should look at? What's worth investigating? What would you like to get together and talk about, right? To really empower the student, give the students that power, right, to lead their own learning, right? I think it's really, really important.
Well, I think that's such a critical piece that you're bringing up there, because I think sometimes people misconstrue, purposely or not, like the idea of guided math. And I had heard you say before, it is this idea of inviting kids to the table.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to run a workshop here at my table on this strategy. Who feels they want to join me here? And so it's about like both the child. When I heard you say that, I was like, yes, that's exactly what is missing, in that sense of, it's not you're just moving around the room and everyone's doing the same thing. No, when you're talking, when Dr. Nicki is talking about what guided math looks like, it's this idea of, where are kids, where do I need them to go, and how can I further that learning for each of those children? And I think that's such a critical, oft missed point when we're thinking about the type of small groups that you're working with and talking about and teaching us about and running records. It's really from that asset point of view. These are where they are. This is where we want them to go next. And I think that's just such a critical point that you make in the work that you're doing.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking that I have often encouraged, and myself, invited kids to the table by saying, like, if, especially older, on the upper end of elementary and into middle school, if you need help, please come to the table now. Like, having this kind of more flexible framework so that kids can choose the places where they'd like to go. But I never really thought about asking them what they would like to talk about, because I usually structure it in a way where I think I know what they need. So it's interesting to think about them bringing to the table their own, not, their own wishes and wants.
And you'd be surprised what kids say. So, like, say you have a 4th grade class and you're learning about fraction, and you tell the kids, okay, what do you think the group should be this week that we should have? Right. You have some teacher groups that you definitely want. Right? You want that conversation, at least one of those places to go. But you also leave it open so that you have a both and. You have some teacher groups, you have some choice groups where kids have decided. And you can have just really powerful spaces of learning, because that's really what we're looking for, is what are the powerful spaces of learning? How do we teach kids in small guided math groups? How do we teach kids to learn their math facts? How do we, the parents are another piece of that, right? We get kids fluent. So one of the things I really believe about fluency and getting kids fluent is that we've got to start really understanding the landscape for addition and subtraction, multiplication and division. Not that kids are going to go lock, stock, and barrel on that landscape, but that as the teachers, we know what the landscape is, so that we don't just have a general fluency center where everybody's working on make 10 facts. Some people can't even make 5. Some people don't even know what 5 looks like. And so why is everybody working on make 10? Surely somebody's doing doubles. So I think we really have to have differentiated workstations where kids work in their zone of proximal development towards grade level standard, and where it's scaffolded. So what that would mean in a fluency workstation is that you have some kids that are working on doubles, some kids that are working on plus 10, some kids are working on doubles plus 2. They're all working in their zone of proximal development and going from success to success. And then when you send the homework home, then the homework is not just like a bag of flashcards. The homework is, you're working on doubles, you get a doubles board game and doubles flashcards. You're working on make 10, you get a make 10 flashcards and a make 10 board game. I guarantee you, if you actually target what kids are practicing, they're going to learn it, and the parents are better able to help them. If you send a parent letter home and with the fluency pack and say, your child is working on make 10 facts. Here are some make 10 flashcards. Here's some make 10 board games. I mean, and it's not hard to do. And you don't have to be the greatest artist in the world to make a board game. You can go on sparklebox.com and print down these beautiful board games and write in the numbers, or type numbers. I mean, all you have to do is Google free board games, and there's tons of them that are already made, and you can fill in, or have the kids make their own board. Say you're working on doubles. I want you to make a game board. Here's a template. Make a game board. Fill in the facts however you want, and you're going to take this home. This is going to be your homework this week. You're going to play this game at home with your siblings or your parents or your guardians or whoever is watching you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Dr. Nicki, you are setting the world on fire right now, because our comments everybody is quoting you, going from success to success. I love that. Lots of things about running records that people are saying. So,
yeah.
Should we take a look at some comments here?
Yeah. If we start asking students what they want, eventually they will begin to think about what they want and need. Otherwise, they will always be waiting to be told. Move from being passive to active learners, which this is something, I mean, Chris, that's so poignant, because this is something that teachers complain about all the time. And they don't know how to make independent learners, perhaps, because if they're complaining about it, then they're not doing something to make them more independent. So I love that you're encouraging that.
Well, and as Marcia was mentioning too, this idea from success to success. So how active of a learner am I if I am not having success? Like you were saying, Dr. Nicki, it's this idea of if I'm not moving from one opportunity of where I feel that I'm learning it and I'm becoming successful, I'm not going to be an active learner. I'm really not, because that classroom space is not somewhere where I feel safe and that I can have success. And so I think that's just such a critical piece that you're saying.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Hi, Marta. I recognize so many names. I'm like, wait, it's just and Ellen is pointing out this thing about building from an asset place. I kind of want to revisit this a little bit, and I know that this is not our key question. And Jane, I love the idea of math groups, but I guess what I'm thinking about is we're going to hit the ground in September.
Yeah.
And a lot of conversation is going to be, I'm right. I'm going to go with we're going to hit the ground. Okay,
I'm going. Sorry on the fingers crossed, but we need that.
When we are back in our full in-school mode, and I know some schools I work in are, and some towns are doing it differently, but there's going to be a lot of talk about, fixing children, filling gaps.
Yeah.
Who we're behind.
There's already talk about that, Sue. I mean, teachers are already saying they can't, they missed, blah, blah, blah.
So I think this, go ahead, please.
No, I'm sorry, that they've labeled it learning loss.
Right.
And so we just have to think about how the language frames it, because the language, it frames the mindset, right? So there are the realities of there are some things that kids don't know now that they might have known had they been in school. There's always been a summer slide, but I don't even know this is like this is
pandemic
not
slide. It's a landslide.
No, this is a landslide. This is the whole mountain has come down. But no, I think there are things that we could do. I really think that if we look at, what can they do? What have they?
Yeah, I love that.
Reasoning increase, because the kids. See, we have to reimagine education, and that's what we're talking about. Right in the NCTM, they just finished their conference.
Yes,
that whole idea of reimagining what it looks like, because it's not like the kids didn't learn anything this year. They learned a lot. You think about how much it takes. For a 5-year-old to sit down at a screen and navigate it and use all that language. Well, unmute yourself and go to the breakout room. The kids have learned a lot about problem solving and about using their innate smartness. What I mean by that is their innate sense of I've got to be able to solve this problem. We have thrown all kinds of stuff at kids, and they've been very good at catching it. Now, some of them still might not know what the letter 2 looks like, but they can reason. And I see that because today I was giving some running records and some numeracy assessments online, and there was a little kindergartner, and she said, I said, can you write the letter 2? She said, no, I've just forgotten what that looks like.
I just forgot.
I just forgot what it looks like. So We can come up all day. It's easy to come up with what kids don't know. But what do they know? And how has this pandemic sharpened their problem-solving skills, their thinking skills? I mean, they have a lot of skills now that are really honed by the challenge of navigating the internet. I know even for me, I get on there and I'm still trying. The learning curve is hard because I'm not a tech person. So it's a hard learning curve. And you think a 5-year-old is doing it. They're doing other things too, like playing with the dog and fighting with their sister, all while they're online. But they're learning to multitask, smiling, play with the dog.
They'll all be great mothers someday.
There's all the human lessons in this moment as well, right? So it's how can we help one another? How do we deal with boredom? How do we deal with trauma? Like there's a whole, I mean, we are surely going to be better humans on the other side of this, children included, you know? So I think your message is really important. I think, yes, we will not see children necessarily what we're used to in a September, but it is what it is. And they certainly know plenty. And we start from there. And we go, you know?
It's so interesting when you were talking about the number 2. It made me think of something that my mother said to me when I was potty training my first. And, you know, I was so worried about the potty training that she'd never be potty trained and whatever. And my mother said to me, well, she's not going to go to college in diapers. And it just gave me like such a perspective, which is kind of like this, like she's not going to go to college not knowing how to write the number 2. And it's okay that she doesn't write the number 2 right now. She's 5. It's fine. She'll learn.
It's fine. She'll get there. Yeah. So I really believe that. I also think too, that we have to really think about what we're doing in terms of fluency online. And because, you know, all the research says that fluency should be taught at least 10 minutes a day. Every day we should be doing fluency for 10 minutes. And I'm not talking time tests. I'm talking really getting kids to reason and think about fluency through energizers and routines. And there's so many, there's great thinkers out there doing all kinds of wonderful things and putting it online. One of my favorite people is Steve Wyburn, because I just think he makes these wonderful games. But, you know, there's lots of games that we could be doing with kids to get them to practice the fluency every day, 10 minutes a day. The literacy people are very serious about the time. We got to do work this much. We got to do this much. And they're very, you know, strong on that. And in math, they're just like, oh, we got to do some math today. But there are guidelines. We must do fluency 10 minutes a day is what all the research says.
Yes. Yes, and meaningful, right? Like building in the hands-on visual imagery, strategic work. Here's a question for you that I've wondered about. So I started teaching in the early 90s, and I feel like I learned all about not using time tests. We had Marilyn Burns, math phobia. We had Kathy Seeley making an NCTM statement. She was the president at the time, and we're still struggling. And so I'm curious if you have any insight on why are we still struggling with how to teach back fluency? That's A. And then B, why are we holding on to timing children as an indication of understanding?
I think because we teach the way we were taught.
Yeah.
And first of all, I mean, let's be real. Most people don't like math. Unfortunately, a lot of people, especially elementary teachers, they just don't like math. It's just the reality of it. And so you get people that don't like math, so then they default to the way they learned it, even though they hate how they learned it and they hate what they learned.
Right.
It's familiar. So you default to the familiar. And it's what the parents know. So you've got all these things kind of working in that tide, right? And so really to get people to change their ideas on it, I think one of the ways to really have the conversations is I think you have to do fluency workshops at school for parents. We used to do Monday math and muffins, or call the parents, give them some money on a Monday, give them some muffins and give them some math.
There you go. Perfect combination.
I think you've got to do videos or line up videos for parents to watch so they could see what we're talking about, what it looks like. I think you have to validate the way parents are doing it by saying, this is the way that you learned, and show them some other ways, right? And I think you have to give them the tools. I really think you have to send parents home that you want your child them to work on doubles. You need to send home the doubles flashcards, the doubles board game. That's a big step up for parents. You can help, right, to do more targeted instruction. So I think we do it because we don't know any better, right? And when we do know better, we default to the familiar.
I think in addition to that, to educating parents on what the strategies are, and it's a lot about the why, because there's so much bad press about how long it takes for kids to do math now, and why can't we just do it the easy way, with the way we learned it, which is, obviously that's the quicker way, but we're trying to teach kids to do things in their head that maybe you don't do in your head. So we want them to be more flexible thinkers, and it's such a hard argument to make with people.
I
don't
find
know why it's so hard.
Well, I think that I always tell people what you should do is you should have some sort of accessible math article that you have your entire, staff read at least once every semester. So at least twice a year.
It's a great idea.
Yeah. I love that idea.
And, read something out of NCTM, something that's really accessible, that's friendly, that's teachers doing it. And then people can talk around what that article says, because now they're not arguing with you. We're having a conversation about an article, right? And so we can talk to and with and about the article rather than, because curriculum, people get into these really heated discussions about curriculum and they become very emotional. You can kind of diffuse some of that by talking about an article about teaching multiplication facts, or an article about teaching, addition facts.
I love that, because it takes it out of the feeling part, right? It's about the reading. Yeah, I like that.
And so I think we're going to move into some of the things that you're working on now, but also in addition, I've sat in many trainings with some of the names that I see in the comments right now, showing your video clips of how to do the strategy work, so even pulling up some of the videos that you've made that show, there was one that I loved about flashcards, how you can use flashcards differently. So we sort them by strategy. It's what strategy would you use on this fact? And then sorting them. So I think you've really made a big difference in this space, and I'm really grateful. And your voice comes through loud around what the purposeful thing looks like. So I guess we just keep working, So thank you for all that. Yeah. So there's a lot of things.
Yeah, we are would love to know what you're working on now, and I guess we'll start there.
Well, because I've been shut in because of COVID, I've been writing a lot. So I just finished a series on guided math in action by grade level. So there's a book for each grade level, K through 5, that shows concrete, pictorial, and abstract lessons. Like, what does that really look like? So I'm excited about that book because I get to talk about what I really believe it is. Guided math is not ability grouping. It never has been. It never should be. Sometimes it becomes a default in classroom, but we have to really push against that. Guided math is about getting a small group of kids in a group and having conversations with them about math, and pushing and nudging and pulling on their thinking, right? And getting them to talk with each other and to each other. The teacher doesn't really do a lot of talking in the guided math group. The teachers facilitate. So I could give you one example. In the book, I talk about pulling some kids together to learn how to measure, because I think we teach it really bad.
Oh, measuring's the worst.
We teach it. Yeah, it just sucks the way we teach it. Like a paper cricket. I never understood those. It's not that hard to get a hold of a cup and a phone. And it's not different. It's not like it's on the moon. We can't.
Right. What's with the paper crickets? Yes.
I'm not sure.
It is always a cricket.
It's a cricket and a paper.
Why?
It's just disturbing. And
what if the cricket grows? Then you have to do a new cricket.
If the cricket grew, that'd be very scary because it's like, but the thing about it is, so I give an example of a guided math lesson on measurement, and I say instead of using gallon man, which most kids, teachers use gallon man all the time. I have nothing against the man, but is that the way you get measurement? Gallon man, you learn that there's this many pints in a quart and this many quarts in a gallon by how many arms and fingers.
I can't do it.
No.
I don't. And he has his cousin is Peter Leader. I think they're both fine fellows. Peter Leader does the same thing. He has all these things. It's a fine family.
I don't know any of that.
I do.
I've seen it, but I didn't know about Peter Leader. That's too much.
Yes, Peter Leader. He has they have names. Katie Kilometer. I don't know. But this is what I say. Instead of using keyword gang, this is what you should do. You go to the guided math group, and you actually have some cups, and you have some pints, and you have some quarts, and you tell the kids, the problem that we're trying to figure out today is how many cups go make a pint.
Right.
How many pints are you going to need to make a quart? And the kids actually pour.
Right.
They pick and they pour it and they make sure they figure it out. They don't have to know how many arms or eyes Peter has or how many feet Walnut has. No, because they had an experience. That's what you're supposed to be doing at the guided math table, meaning that you're not supposed to be doing worksheets, right? A lot of people use the guided math table just to pull kids and do, page number 99. That's not the purpose of guided math. Mm-hmm. If you're doing that, it's a wasted opportunity. Mm-hmm. So I really wanted to create a series that showed lessons of how do we use concrete pictorial and how do we get kids to think, asking open questions. I'm very influenced by Marion Small. Mm-hmm. I read everything she writes, and I just love her work. She's brilliant.
Yes, she is.
But this is another example of what goes on at the guided math table. Instead of bringing everybody to the table and saying, Susie left her house at 2:25 and she came back at 4:30. How long was she gone? That's what we typically do when we're trying to teach in lab time. Marianne Small says, bring the kids to the table and say, Susie was gone 45 minutes. When could she have left? And when could she have come? Isn't that a brilliant question? Total upgrade.
And it's so easy to do.
So easy to do. That's the kind of question you ask the guided math table. Kids are going to come up with all kinds of different answers. And then you scaffold it. Don't over scaffold. Be careful not to scaffold.
Yeah.
You scaffold and you have elapsed time rulers so they could see, what that means and look at it on the elapsed time rules. That's what guided math is. So I've been working on a series by grade level about what those kinds of lessons look like. And then I'm revising the guided math in action, and I'm writing some workstation books. I love to write. I'm addicted to reading. It's just so fun.
That's English.
Great, because that's a good thing to be able to do during a pandemic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
I want to give a...
Sorry,
go ahead.
I want to comment on some of the comments because I can't. We've never had this many laughing faces in our comments. And Jane O'Connor says, thank you so much. I have to head out. Love leaving with a laugh, Peter Leader. Oh my gosh, that's too much. I love it.
I wanted to pick up on the example of the task that you gave for that teacher table, because I know that there's people out there I can see from Marshfield Public Schools, and I worked on implementing guided math with that district, and then COVID hit. But when you give an open task like you just explained from Marion Small with the elapsed time, now the group at the table, it does not have to be an ability group. That's a task where I can have mixed ability. And this is what we were seeing in those classrooms. So the idea is small group, just right instruction. And like you said about scaffolds, but we would love books with examples of tasks like that, because now that is not an ability-based question.
Right. No.
It's very open.
I always say, I believe that guided math groups, people are pushing us into these corners of either or.
Yeah.
I believe it's both and. Sometimes you can do a homogeneous group.
Sometimes.
I don't think there's anything wrong with pulling all the partners that don't know how to count to 5 together.
I agree.
At some point and counting to 5. And the kid that knows how to count to 1,000 has no purpose being in the group learning to count to 5. It's a waste of their time.
Yep.
Right.
But so I believe that there has to be a lot of heterogeneity in the groups. But I do believe there is a space. It's not all the time. It's not always. It's not forever.
Right.
But there is a space to pull everybody that is struggling with multiplying their 6s together. Because my first question is, can they multiply their 3s? They can't multiply their 3s, then why are they working on their 6s?
Well, it's that key piece of what you were saying. It's what they need at that time. It's looking at if they know their 3s, then I can move them into their 6s. And so it's having that knowledge and that understanding. And one of the questions that came up earlier, which I may get wrong, is there's been a request for you to write a running records for what happens after our basic fluency.
Oh, right.
And so like what comes after that, and thinking about, okay, how do we have that asset-based, that really kind of drilled down idea for some of our other content areas just outside of fluency?
Yeah. I am very interested in trajectories for fractions. Because I think,
we love that too.
And I'm always influenced. I read this story like 20 years ago in the book or the magazine Rethinking Schools. They had an edition out. It had this story in it, and I never can find this. I can't find the story, but the story was about a teacher who was planning for parent conferences, and he was working with Native Alaskan people, and he had written all the things that the child could not do. And he couldn't wait for the parent to get there because he said, I'm going to tell this parent that they need to help their kids do this and this, and their kid can't do this and this. And that he was just prepared. And the parent came, and the father was an humble man. And he looked at that teacher and he said, you know all the things my son can't do. But do you know what he can do? My son can trap a bear. My son can look at the footprints of a rabbit in the snow and tell you what kind it was. My son can name the different types of snow that fall out of the sky. Do you know what my son can do? Because if you know what my son can do, then you can get him. You can use that to get him to know the things you want him to learn here in school. And that teacher said, he was so humbled by what the man said to him. He didn't know what he was going to do because he said, I thought I was going to tell that parent all these things. Wow. And that parent ended up telling me all the things that I needed to know. And that story's always stuck with me. We
absolutely
know what our kids can do and guide them from there, because our kids can do so many things.
And it's so interesting because that relates entirely back to your example, right? So if you're giving an open question like the one you gave about the 45 minutes, that you see exactly what kids can do when you give them an open question like that.
Yes.
You see exactly what they can do, and you can then go in to help in a spot where they're stuck. I just love that. And preparing for a group like that is not that much work. You come with a really good one question and you just do that. And everybody talks about that. And everybody talks about all the different answers and why they're right or why they're not right.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Absolutely. You can have rich discussions when you have.
Well, thank you for that story coming from a father. I'm gonna remember that. I think we're coming close to our end of time, so we want to make sure a few more people have an opportunity with the raffle.
Yes, if you were joining us after we got started, Dr. Nicki has generously offered to raffle off 3 of her classes from her a class to 3 people from her Math Academy. And so you can enter that by commenting here on Facebook, on Twitter, or in YouTube. any of those locations, if you just add a comment into the comment section, we will enter you into that raffle on Monday evening. And so we're going to find out who those lucky people are.
I know, exciting,
Starting next
exciting
week.
stuff.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Nicki, for being here, and not just for being here, just for being you. You are such an influencer. You are an inspiration, and thank you for all that you do for math education.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been an honor to be here and talk with you guys.
All right. You take good care, and we're going to have a few announcements. Okay. So we're going to go to bed thinking about the Gallon Man and Peter Leader skipping off to pour cups into.
I know. With Katie Kilometer. It's too much. So funny.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, good stuff. So if you would like to get some free resources or learn more about Looney Math, you can just text Looney to 22828, and then you will get put on our mailing list. Or you can go to looneymath.com and you will find all kinds of stuff about things that we do and a ton of free resources, Sue's blog, all kinds of stuff there.
I would say there are some open tasks too within the task sections that you could use at that teacher table. Looking for those. That's, sometimes that's the hardest thing, is what's that little switch that I can make. And so the problem solving section on the website is great for some of those teacher table discussions.
Yes, absolutely. Awesome. And so just a reminder, or actually not a reminder, next week our show is actually going to take place on Thursday instead of Wednesday. So we are really excited. We're going to be interviewing Dr. Lou Matthews, and he has an amazing show and a platform that actually runs on Wednesdays. And so we need to see him on Thursday. And so we look forward to seeing him, and we look forward to seeing you. We thank you for all that you do, for tuning in, and just a reminder to always be curious. Take good care, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.